Yeah, we've had Ehret's eighth one come out now. Um, I think I'll try to cover this and the last one together. Um, I'm still not quite seeing where he's going with all this, but his main thing seems to be that Tesla was a sort of predecessor of the transhumanists. Transhumanism was a thing that, I don't know, we need to have a little bit of a think about that, because our relationship with our technology undoubtedly has an impact on who we are and what we are. I mean, even something as simple as keeping a diary using the written word, a technology, you know, that was invented at some point, you know that has the effect of, you know, for people that kept diaries in their troubled teenage years, they can read back through them later on in life, you know, and their you know, their past life becomes an object for them in a way that it's not for people like me that just rushed through the whole thing, didn't have a clue, and still don't, to be honest. But the nature of technology can have a great effect on how we perceive ourselves in the world and what we perceive ourselves to be, and how we view where we're going and where we've been. So, yeah, in a sense, you know, writing is a kind of form of transhumanism, if you want to look at it in that kind of broad sense. So we want to be careful when we're talking about the impact of technology on what it is to be human, because, you know, in a sense, otherwise, what's the point of technology if we're not using it to change how we are in the world, you know? But anyway, Matt Ehret seems keen to sort of nail Tesla's to this Bulwer Lytton's book about what's it called? Oh God, what's the name of it? There's some funny name of some sort of substance that then, you know, Matt seems to be saying that this book, this kind of story that seemed to be taken up by lots of Satanists, and presumably this Bulwer Lytton was linked up with all that network, whatever, it directly inspired Tesla's teleautomata. God, that's a mouthful. And then he goes on about all this 0 point energy stuff, and, you know, but, you know, I don't really feel this is being fair. You know, the fact that Tesla made some passing reference to a book he had read that was about the kind of things that he was interested in terms of machinery, that was, you know, technology, and so on and so forth, doesn't mean to say that he was bought into the whole, you know, ideology of these kind of satanic cults that Matt Ehret's pointing out, which obviously are things I didn't know about before I read all this, so I'm glad I read it all, but I just still don't see the, you know, the thing here. I don't, you know, you read what, yeah, I'll pick out a few quotes from Tesla, as that's what Matt Ehret seems to be doing, and maybe my quotes are just as out of context as his, I don't know. But they do seem to sort of suggest that there's slightly more to what Tesla was thinking about than Matt Ehret's giving him credit for, and also that they are slightly more in line with, you know, one of Matt Ehret's avowed heroes, Leibniz, you know. And this stuff about 0-point energy. I mean, obviously, I know that Matt must know that Tesla didn't invent the phrase 0-point energy. This is something to do with quantum mechanics, the uncertainty principle. I've had to write all this down. I don't know what I'm talking about here, but the uncertainty principle forbids both location and velocity being known. So if you imagine the universe frozen down to zero, that restricts the movement, and so it either has to stop the velocity or stop the movement, and make your choice. But the result of it is you end up with Dirac and quantum electrodynamics, where quantum systems continuously fluctuate at their lowest possible energy state. So it is a kind of non-physical ether medium, according to the quantum theorists. But obviously Tesla did hold to a kind of ether theory, as did Leibniz, as I'll try to show here. But he didn't hold to that ether theory. He held to one that was kind of preceded this whole, even the relativity era, and basically goes back to the same kind of logic that Leibniz employs in this following sort of passage. So for Leibniz, there was no void. The universe had to be a plenum or a plenum. I must look up how you pronounce that. And here he says, to admit the void in nature is ascribing to God a very imperfect work. I lay it down as a principle that every perfection which God could impart to things, without derogating from their other perfections, has actually been imparted to them. Now let us fancy a space wholly empty. God could have placed some matter in it without derogating in any respect from all other things. Therefore, he has actually placed some matter in that space. Therefore, there is no space wholly empty. Therefore, all is full. Now, that is the logic by which the whole idea of the ether from antiquity forwards was established on. That is the logic of why there has to be an ether. And elsewhere, Leibniz comments approvingly on Descartes' idea of a plenum and the consequent motion of all things being circular, and that this circular motion presupposes the indefinite division of all the various parts of matter. But Leibniz wants to go further and say it's not just an indefinite division, it's an infinite division. It goes all the way down. And so this motion, there are no parts to anything. Everything is infinitely complex, and this motion is infinite, goes all the way down to infinity and all the way up. And that change must be a continuum. So it's in a constant seething process of motion, of circular motion as well, because as Descartes points out, if you've got a plenum, then any motion has to displace something in front of it, and so any motion ends up being circular. And so you've got this sort of circular motion, let's call it a vortical motion, which Descartes thinks of it as. This goes all the way down to infinity. So this is an archetypal argument for the existence of an ether. So, Tesla believes in an ether, yeah, and he believes that this ether is a primary substance of some kind, along kind of Leibnizian lines, So here Tesla says, all perceptible matter comes from a primary substance or tenuity beyond conception, filling all space. The akasha, or luminiferous ether, which is acted upon by the life-giving prana, or creative force, calling into existence in never-ending cycles all things and phenomena. Now, you could see that as a kind of analogue to Leibniz's idea of the monads and the monadology. Tesla does have some things to say about the world and man's place in it, but overall none of it really strikes me as being the kind of thoughts of a Satanist. I mean, take this, a new world must be born, a world that would justify the sacrifices offered by humanity. This new world, I don't think he means, babies being sacrificed at the altar of Moloch here. I think he's talking about just the everyday sacrifices of working hard, the toil, the labours, everything else that goes into what makes the human world go round, This new world must be a world in which there shall be no exploitation of the weak by the strong, of the good by the evil, where there will be no humiliation of the poor by the violence of the rich, where the products of intellect, science and art will serve society for the betterment and beautification of life, and not the individuals for achieving wealth. This world shall not be a world of the downtrodden and humiliated, but of free men and free nations, equal in dignity and respect. Now, that could be part of a speech by Lavrov on the fair world order right now. It doesn't seem to me to be the words of a Satanist. Now, he does have some strange views of his brain, but then if you kind of look at Leibniz as, he thinks that everything is in some sense a kind of living sort of entity, and life goes all the way down, souls go all the way down. Now, Tesla does say some strange things about the soul and it dying with the body and being nothing but bodily movements, and he's obviously got some kind of a behaviourist slant on what it is to be human, but you've got to balance that out with other sort of things that he says, like the one I just read out, and the following, that everyone should consider his body as a priceless gift from one whom he loves above all, i.e. God, a marvellous work of art, of indescribable beauty and mystery beyond human conception, and so delicate that a word, a breath, a look, nay, a thought may injure it. I mean, this isn't really the words of someone who's just a sort of arch empiricist who wants to. This isn't a sort of reductive sort of view of the human body. I mean, I just can't. It just doesn't strike me as that, And here again, life is and will ever remain an equation incapable of solution. but it contains certain known factors. So in other words, you can't reduce life to an algorithm, you know. It will ever remain incapable of solution. You know, so although he's got these ideas of evolving machines and so forth, there's a sort of humility there, you know. And I think that his sort of humility is behind a lot of his comments about, you know, his brain. Like here, my brain is only a receiver in the universe. My brain is only a receiver. In the universe, there is a core from which we obtain knowledge, strength, and inspiration. I have not penetrated into the secrets of this core, but I know that it exists. So, you know, I think that, you know, there's a certain kind of behaviourism here that is at work, but equally to the there's also a sense of the beyond, of something that is beyond the body, that is beyond, you know, the ineffable, you know, let's call it, which it doesn't really strike me as being, you know, really reductionist when you weigh up all his various comments and you don't just take things completely out of context. You know, I mean, like this one, like every human being is an engine geared to the wheelwork of the universe. Though seemingly only affected by its immediate surrounding, the sphere of external influence extends to infinite distance. So, you know, if you're talking about the human being as a body, then, you know, this would fit in with what Leibniz is saying. If you're kind of just reducing the human being to a body, then that would be just, you know, not a great view of the world. But given his other kind of comments about the body and things, and things like such as this, like, but the instinct is something which transcends knowledge. We have undoubtedly certain fibres that enable us to perceive truths when logical deduction or any other willful effort of the brain is futile. So, you know, inspiration, maybe divine inspiration, you know. I can't see that this is really at odds with, you know, it's not utterly incompatible, let's call it. I mean, I'm not trying to say, I'm sure that Tesla had probably read Leibniz, you know, he's very widely read. And at least one of his books was by a Jesuit fella called Boscovich, who was trying to find a way of bringing together the ideas of Leibniz with those of Newton, and Newton's, I think, his idea of force or something. So, you know, there's so much stuff here that kind of doesn't fit in with this sort of demonic figure that Matt Ehret's trying to paint. But you know what you know, what's really important about Tesla is what he actually did scientifically. So what weird ideas he might have had and what literature he might have been fond of reading in his spare time is in a way, it's not irrelevant, but it's not the core thing about why people think of Tesla as being, you know, a great scientific figure, you know. And the fact that he might have believed in human evolution, I mean, I should think almost every scientist in his day believed in human evolution. You know, I mean, probably I dare say there are scientists, and I'm sure Matt Ehret can point them out, that didn't believe in Darwin's theory of evolution, but most people did. But that doesn't make them demonic, you know. And lots of people believed in Darwin's evolution, but didn't believe in social Darwinism, you know. So, you know, I think one of those figures was Thomas Paine. You know, he obviously contributed to the American Revolution and everything. So, you know, I think there's too much of a black and white thing trying to be painted here, and I think Matt Ehret, while it might be a useful corrective to the myths of Tesla, the sort of the God type figure, you know, it suffers from the same fundamental flaw, as far as I can see, as things stand. So if he might well have a killer argument coming up, so we'll have to see. This is obviously a work in progress. But anyway, that's this one.